And a very, very warm welcome back to all of you to the Nordic BIM Summit 2021. I'm Maddie Savage, your moderator, BBC journalist and freelancer for a range of other media around the world. And with me, we've also got Thomas Lindgren from Symetri, which is hosting the summit. So we're talking about new beginnings over the next couple of days. We've already had some great panel discussions and a jam-packed break, so-called break. What did you get up to?
Yeah, well, it was a really great break sessions, and we had a lot of different topics and things. And I really looked around into the different session rooms, and there was really good, great discussions going on with different times. And I also had the pleasure of having some network dates coming up. I think the people were kind of surprised me coming up on the network at the networking day. But that was really nice. I had a good dialogue with a client from ELU Consult here in Stockholm, and also somebody from White. And it was very interesting, and they were really pleased about the sessions and the show so far. So,
3 meetings he booked. You can tell he's top of his field in sales. Well, I enjoyed listening to Sweco Canel, a fantastic DJ, while I was preparing for some of our next interviews, and also had a Swedish fika, a very nice raw ball, a bit of a sweet snack, to give me some energy for the rest of the day. So we are going to be focusing on digitalization a little bit later, but first we're going to be zooming in on sustainability, right?
Yes, Maddie, and this is kind of a serious topic, isn't it? Because by now I think everybody's pretty much aware about the challenge we face with climate change and overusing of our resources and pollutions of the world. So, but there are people who claims that especially the construction industry has a great opportunity to actually make a big impact and drive a change for this. And one of them here today, and you have more information about that.
Yeah, exactly. I think very important to reflect on the fact that there are a lot of opportunities, also a lot of challenges. And our next speaker will be reflecting a little bit on both. We're privileged to have with us here in Stockholm Chief Sustainability Officer for Sweco, which is Europe's largest technical consultancy firm, Mattias Goldmann.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening in. We've all been to great conferences before, and we've all heard brilliant keynote speakers before. In fact, 2 of them this very afternoon. This one is different. I don't aim for myself to be brilliant. I aim for us to be brilliant together. This is a cry for help, not on my behalf, but on the behalf of the entire planet and civilization as we know it, because we are right now in a position where we can make a huge difference for the better or choose not to. And I believe that the construction sector and BIM as a tool is key to achieving the goals and targets that we've agreed on jointly. Now, I am often asked, well, that was a great speech, but we never got to understand who you are. And I really don't want to take a lot of time on that, because you can easily Google me later. But I want to say this, that over the years, everything I've done has been setting the ambitions and targets that we now have in place. That's why I was named most influential in sustainability issues. That's why I was knighted by the French government for my climate work and so forth. And all of that we leave behind now. Setting targets, inspiring, is no longer relevant. We now need to deliver. And that is where you and not me are the most relevant. So if you want to know more about me, Google it. But if you want to make a difference, zoom in on the opportunities that we have ahead and how you can be part of the solution, because otherwise you're simply part of the problem. We are click, clack, tick, tack, ticking down the clock towards 2030, where we as a society, as a globe, as citizens of this planet, are to reach the 17 sustainable development targets that a lot of us have on our jackets and that a lot of us worry about now, because first of all, they were decided by the world together to deliver upon together, not something just for the poor countries or just for the rich or just for governments or just for cities or so forth. It's for all of us. But we see now with the tragic, terrible pandemic that's hit us so hard that progress that we made over the last decades has been eradicated. We wanted to eradicate poverty. We eradicated progress instead. And we have a 20, 25-year setback compared to where we were just a year ago, which means that we all need to roll up our sleeves and be part of the solution. And if I zoom in on what I believe is our generation, our moments, deciding issue, it's climate change. Literally, this world is on fire right now. And it's on fire because we have failed, even in the pandemic times, failed to reduce the amount of carbon emissions and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. You see right here how, of course, climate has changed over the centuries and millennials, but when you look at the current level of CO2 in the atmosphere, you see that we are way off the chart compared to where we've ever been before as human beings. Now, before, that includes heating times, that includes ice ages, and now we're simply up there where we've never been before, and it's a very risky territory because we don't know what it means to be there, but we do know that we're very close to a brink where it becomes incredibly difficult to turn back time or turn back the tide. We now see how methane levels soar to the point that where there's methane coming up in the Arctic tundra, for instance, you can actually set fire on the water or set fire on the air, as we see in the picture here. So it's clearly time for enhanced action. Time for you and I and all of us together to do more. That's not just my words. Those are the words of the Paris Agreement that we all, as a globe, as countries, agreed upon 5 years ago. Now, you might wonder, why am I bringing up this now, 5 years later? Because the Paris Agreement was very easy to join. In fact, every country gets to bring in their nationally determined contributions. And it's only 5 years later now that it kicks in that every 5 years you have to enhance your action. You have to deliver more. You have to set more stringent targets. This is the first time, and we see that it's actually happening. We see the US under President Biden saying that they are going to build back better. We see China, for the first time ever, setting their target for climate neutrality. We see the EU, with the EU Commissioner von der Leyen, saying that the Green Deal is our chance to be relevant as a union, the first continent ever to be climate neutral. I disagree, though, with von der Leyen when she says that this is Europe's man on the moon moment. You might know that there's been 24 men on the moon already, but not a single woman. So I call this Europe's woman on the moon moment. We also see this in our own home country, Sweden, where we're based at right now, that we want to be the world's fossil-free welfare state. There's 8 parties in the parliament. 7 of them agree on this target, which gives us tremendous belief that this really will happen. And for those of you who might still wonder, what is it all good for? What difference does a small country like Sweden or a small company like the one you might represent or municipality or so forth, what difference does it make if we focus on combating climate change? Well, you will see that there's so many co-benefits that come with combating climate change. And most importantly, when we need to convince the stockholders or the chairmen or owners or so forth of our companies, it's become increasingly clear, not least the last year, how sustainability and profitability are now interlinked. If we take the Dow Jones Sustainability Indexes and we take the Fortune Global 500, see who's doing really well there, you will see how they interact and overlap more and more completely. And companies that set stringent, leading, tough sustainability and climate targets, for instance, that are part of the science-based targets that you see here in front of you. These companies form a coalition of the willing, where it's very easy to reach out and say, hey, you're also part of this coalition. Let's make better business together. It's clearly a business winner in the construction sector as elsewhere to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And one way to do that, I don't want to talk too much about Sweco, where I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer, but just as an example, one way to do that is to set climate and sustainability targets in line with science and in line with the national and global targets that we've already decided upon. This is how we do it at Sweco. 2040 climate neutral, 2030 halving our emissions, our impact compared to 2020. That's in line with the carbon law as defined by Johan Rockström and others. And in fact, it's faster than what's needed to combat climate change. But also in line with the Paris agreements, you remember the science-based targets, but you also remember the nationally determined contributions. In line with that, we decided to be a front runner in each home market. Now, for those of you who have several home markets, you will realize that a tough climate target in Turkey and a tough climate target in Sweden might be two different things. So that's why we've set, as a company with many home markets, we've set different targets for different markets, meaning that we're always the leader that people can come up to and ask for help when they want to develop on their targets. And of course, no target is better than the KPIs. And all of us work with KPIs for a long time in other areas. It's time to be as clear, as defined when it comes to KPIs for climate and sustainability. And let me be honest with you, what are the main drivers for us? And probably for you, when we focus on reaching climate and sustainability targets. Some of us might think, well, it's legislation. It's not. The legislation on climate, be it in Sweden or the Netherlands or France or New Zealand or Kenya, is very rarely stringent enough so that it really means that we need to up our ante and do more as a company. Some people say it's the customers that demand it from us. In some instances, maybe, but clearly more often it's us pushing the customers to demand or even accept a more climate-friendly solution than what they initially had in mind. So more often than not, I find the main driver for improving our work within sustainability and climate, it's our colleagues. It's the employee, it's the current employee, and it's the future employees that we want to attract. When we look at what differentiates us from our competition, or you from your competition, often what we offer in terms of products and services, it's not all that different, but our values, what we stand for. If you're proud when you look at yourself in the mirror before you go to work, that's what makes a huge difference. And when we ask Generation Z, Generation Millennials, Generation COVID, Generation Greta, who they want to work for, they say, well, who's in line with what I believe in terms of sustainability and climate. And when we look at sustainability and climate, make no mistake, we're going to look at the whole picture now. A couple of years back, it was enough to just focus on what came out of the tailpipe of the car or how the house performs once it's built. But now we're going to ask cradle to grave, circular economy, holistic solutions and answers to the issues that we have at hand. So this could be just another day, just another conference, just another webinar you're looking at the same time as you're checking your emails. Or it could be day one where we decide that we're not going to be part of the problem anymore. We are going to be part of the solution. I hope you choose the latter. If so, I'm here for you. Thank you so much.
Right, Mattias Goldmann, that was a fascinating talk all about sustainability. Definitely a lot of food for thought for all of us, what we need to be doing both as individuals, those of us working for companies as well. And we're going to dive into some more questions and issues around this topic with our next bunch of panellists, and Mattias staying with us here in Stockholm on the sofa as well. Thank you ever so much. So Thomas, let us know who these panellists will be besides Mattias.
Well, yes, besides Mattias, we have Pano Passanen from the software company One Click LCA. He's based in Helsinki. Very welcome to you. And we have also Keyword Palm. He is an investment director of the Nordic investment fund company Alder. He's based in Stockholm, and they are focusing on sustainable investments. Very welcome to you as well. And finally, we have Jesper Ring, who is the CEO of the company Frame APS in Denmark, and they are working with a solution for leading and managing processes or developing sustainable buildings. All very welcome, all of you.
Fantastic. And we're taking questions from those of you at home as well. We've had quite a few. We'll get through as many as we can, but we are short on time. But we are reading them all, just so that you know. And we are very grateful for your input. Also on the hashtag Nordic BIM Summit. So I want to start with Jesper, a question for you. We've heard a lot about sustainability ambitions, but I want to know, do you really think this is the time now that people are going to stop just talking and focusing on targets and actually taking proper action, as Mattias has asked people to?
Yeah, it's really looking great out there these days. So unlike earlier, I'm actually quite confident that we'll see all this talk converted into real action. And why now? Well, it's obvious to me that it's not just the building industry alone, it's all around us. This indicates that sustainability is really becoming a norm in society. And this impacts the building industry greatly. And that's a good thing. I believe that we're at a critical point when it comes to climate change and the loss of biodiversity. And I'm not the only one. People or even society react by demanding change right now. We can, yeah.
I want to bring in Kaywood directly to pick up on that point, the sort of demands. And when we're talking about investing in businesses, there does seem to be a lot more demand for businesses to be green from the start. So I want you to just tell us how much the investing climate has or is changing.
Oh, yes, definitely. I would say it has changed to a quite substantial degree, thankfully. So just to give you one example, when we started to raise funds and meet investors 10 years ago when we started Alder, they were quite confused. They didn't really understand what we were about to do. So are you about to earn money and generate returns to our investments, or are you going to support and help the environment? But they didn't really understand that this is actually interlinked. And this was our investment thesis, that we believe that you can actually generate attractive returns by developing and improving the sustainability of the companies. So it's rather it's thanks to that we generate returns rather than despite of. There's no contradiction here. And if you think about it today, in these last 10 years, I think that most of the investors actually realize and understand that today. And I read it just recently that today around 90% of all the investors that invest into private equity today, they actually use ESG and sustainability as a criteria when they evaluate what to invest. That is a change.
Mattias, you're nodding there. Do you buy that, or is this greenwashing and just people wanting to talk the talk?
You know, I'm always worried about greenwashing, but what worries me even more is green hushing. When companies are afraid of telling what they do because they feel that it just might backfire, it's just not good enough. We need to make everybody proud of the steps that we're taking. I see tremendous steps and leaps being taken now, and very much in line with what we've heard here. I also see, especially during the pandemic this last year, how it makes incredible business sense to leave the fossil, linear, non-efficient behind and go circular, renewable, and efficient.
Okay, that's really good to hear those kind of positive steps. In terms of targets, I want to know perhaps what some of our panel might think of those. We had Alison Scott earlier talking about bringing data together in the cloud and how that can help to reduce carbon emissions by up to 20%. Panu, what do you think about targets, and what kinds of targets would you be in favour of?
Right. So we have worked for the Finnish government this year, or we actually published this year proposals for carbon footprint limit values for Finnish regulatory limits to be set in 25. And we found that just by combining 3 measures, including a energy class and 1 or 2 optional other measures, all the building stock can reduce carbon emissions immediately with existing measures and technology between 20 and 45%, depending on the building type. And very similar things can be done across Nordics. Of course, the percentage won't be identical. In other work we have done with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, we have identified scenarios where companies working in the real estate field could reduce the lifecycle carbon impacts or embodied carbon impacts or both by ratios of 30 to 50%, depending on the market where they operate. So there's very significant scope for immediate reductions, but it doesn't suffice to introduce, let's say, software or technology. You also have to introduce processes where you take this into the agenda from the first day. So it's your design target, similarly as cost, for example. So that's the way you can actually work with targets. You can't build them into something later.
Absolutely. A very multifunctional, multi-purpose approach. Thomas, are we getting any questions in on sustainability?
No, not so far, and please keep them coming. But I have a question for you, Keyword. And we heard from Pano here that they were talking about legislation and regulations for this, and that's one way to go with that. But you're talking about investments and bringing it out there. So if I were a building owner or somebody wanted to invest in this, how can I make sure that it's actually profitable to do this, not just good for my conscience?
Yeah. Yes, that's a very good question, and the way that when we invest into companies, we try to see also how it's linked to the actual business model of the company and how the business model itself can drive impact. So, for example, in terms of the construction industry, I think there is quite tangible and concrete value for the customers here, because when we talk about efficiency, not only in the construction phase, but also in the facility management phase, that translates into huge value for the property owner. And when it's so clearly linked between sustainability and efficiency to the actual monetary value as well, and we all know what the real estate prices in the Stockholm is today, then I think that they can quite quickly make the math and realize how much value it actually is. And the causality and link between efficiency, sustainability, and also financial value.
I can see Mattias wants to hop in there.
Because I totally agree. I would love to bring up three things. First of all, you can
Keep it quick.
you can get money cheaper. Interest is lower when the risk is lower, and when you're more sustainable, the risk is lower. Secondly, there's an opportunity to get more customers because you're more attractive when your housing is sustainable. You attract a lot of customers, like my own company, Sweco, which will never be in an unsustainable building. And thirdly, there's a lot of money around now in the European Green Deal and so forth, meaning that if you do something that's just mediocre, you have to pay all of it yourself. But if you do something that's really good for sustainability and climate, you got a great opportunity to have institutions pay part of that bill.
Certainly a shift of incentivization rather than just punishments. And Thomas, you've got a few questions to round things off.
Yes, and I was actually thinking both Mattias and Keyword and all of you actually. So based on what you're saying and you're saying, would you say that companies today in general too conservative about this? Could they be more proactive and bring this further on?
I would hesitate to say all companies are the same, but we clearly see that within any given sector, you will have front runners and laggards. And Tesla would be number one example on how it really pays off to be the front runner.
Yeah, but from a financial point of view, Keyword, would you say that the companies are too conservative, or are they afraid to go in and invest in doing these things? Is that a hard thing for you to fund?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question and a very 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 good one, and I actually would like to address the issue that was also raised earlier. That I actually I'm a firm believer that regulation can actually accelerate and accelerate the shift. And just to take one example, if you start from the top, where really all the money is, so with the more clear framework and regulation of what needs to be disclosed and reported, because investors need guidance of where they should invest the money in. And not only into greenwashing companies, but actually into the companies that really make and drive impact. So just to give one example that is being implemented right now, and when it comes to the EU taxonomy framework and sustainable finance, then that actually forces all companies to disclose information on a much more concrete way on a very specifically how much they actually contribute to the environment. And this is all linked. You can see also on the public markets and stock exchanges that environmental companies, they are much more highly valued now. So that is also the greatest recipe you can get on the market. And all the business leaders, they are rational decision makers. So they will actually do, and they're strongly incentivized by the financial returns as well. So I think that the public investment market actually plays a great role here as well, how capital is allocated and into what companies. That's a strong incentive, I think, and an important one.
Okay. So, well, thank you very much. Time is running up, but I do have a last question for you, Mattias. And this is, I read somewhere that you picked up a special big award from the president of Macron of France. Could you perhaps tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I was excited when we wanted to have the Paris Agreement in place, that we needed to have governments, but also companies aboard. And at the time, I was heading a think tank where we could sort of meet and have every partner on board. So after that, I was knighted by the French government, which means that my wife is now a lady, I believe. But and the people are often disappointed because they meet me and they think I would be like in shining armor. But I'm just a regular guy, but knighted, which proves that if you focus on climate, you will be awarded.
Yes, but that is a great award for a great job.
Thank you.
And thank you, all of you, very much for joining this. And thank you so much for the very important job you all do. And we really look forward to continue follow you in the future. Thank you very, very much.